Sorry, we stopped recording because I reached the maximum file size. I don't know. Anyway, the days are really confused and I can't remember exactly what happened. But at some point I asked the nurses, listen, I had missed him, I'd missed him twice. I remember that. Throughout that course of that first 3 crazy days, I had missed him twice. And, I just said to the girls, like, can you have him call me, please? Because, I need to speak to him. I mean, I'm his spouse, for heaven's sakes. And I need, some information from the horse's mouth here. So, and they said, yeah, absolutely, no problem. So anyway, it must have been the morning of day 3. The phone rang. I was actually driving into the hospital, and my cell phone rang, so I had to pull over, obviously, to answer it. And he says to me, "Oh, hello. So your husband has obviously had a stroke." And I'm like, "Really?" Anyway, whatever. I don't mean to be bitchy, but anyway, I didn't have a lot of patience at that point in time. And I said, yeah, I said, from what I'm given to understand, he had quite a significant stroke in the cerebellum. And he then says to me, "Oh, it was a lot more than that." Just like that. "Oh, it was a lot more than that." Really? And I said, "Well, what do you mean a lot more than that?" And he said, "Well, I've just looked at your husband's latest MRI results, and he has had quite significant stroke in 3 areas of his brain." Really? So going back to, when I was first starting to talk about what had happened with him, and that how he had lost the vision in his right eye, but then loss of use on the left side. And I couldn't, so you're telling me he's had 2 strokes, one on either side of his brain. He sure enough did, as well as the one in the back. So he had 3. So I think what happened was okay, so he had, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. So I've already said about the cerebellum stroke. So the other areas were the occipital lobe, left occipital back here, and right temporal here, right? So the left occipital stroke is what blew out the vision in his right eye. And I think that's the stroke that happened when he was down at the lake. Because as he was able to tell me later, that when he picked up that bucket and put it in the trunk of the car, all of a sudden everything got all crazy and whirly and dizzy. And he realized that he couldn't see out of his right eye, that it was just white. So that would have been the occipital stroke there. Coming up the hill, when he decided, to drive himself home. Oh, Lordy. I mean, he was only literally 2.5, 3 minutes down the hill, but still, I mean, I would have called for help, I think. I think coming up the hill was when the right temporal stroke happened. So the right temporal stroke is why he had loss of use on the left, why he lost the left arm, left leg, all that stuff. And then the cerebellum stroke is the one that hit in the driveway. So in under 10 minutes, he basically had 3 simultaneous strokes, just boom, 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 in 3 different areas of his brain. So that's how all that damage occurred, and I think that's the order in which it happened, just by, when he was able later to sort of give me, particulars of what happened, what he remembers happening. So he then told me, I was at the hospital by this time, and he had told me when we talked on the phone when I was driving in there, he had told me that they were still, querying whether they were going to, flight him out or at least take him by ambulance or something, but that he was, ill enough, clearly, that this little hospital can't do this. So they're going to need to take him probably to Toronto. He was still talking about St. Mike's, or now, whatever. Doctors earlier were talking about St. Mike's, and he was still talking about St. Mike's. So, he said, "I'm going to consult with a couple of colleagues." He said, "I have a colleague in Peterborough who is a vascular surgeon." And he said, "We're going to talk to him." And I said, "Well, I thought that the stroke was ischemic, not hemorrhagic." And he said, "Well, yeah, but the blockage is clearly in, the blood vessels." And I'm like, "Well, duh, yeah, that makes sense." Sorry, I'm not thinking clearly. And he said, I'm going to speak to this vascular surgeon in Peterborough, and we're going to see what he has to say, what he thinks, where we should proceed with this. And okay, good enough. And he said, I will be calling. I won't be at the hospital this afternoon, but I will call and give an update on what's going on. So I said, okay, good enough. So continued on my way, went to the hospital, and I was just stunned. I was just like, honestly, I've never, in all of my years of doing this for a living, I have never heard, I've heard of people having multiple strokes, boom, 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 you know, all over the brain, and they don't generally survive. And if they do survive, they are pretty much left in a state of you know, almost zero quality of life. I mean, it's you know, it's not pretty. It's not good. So yeah, I mean, I was just absolutely stunned, and I'm imagining that this is you know, this is the way that my husband is going to end up, that he's you know, still at this point barely conscious. He still is unable to speak. I mean, he's trying to speak. He's you know, sort of garbling and mumbling and whatnot. But the left side was still gone. Yeah. So I really didn't think that the outcome was going to be very good at all. At this point, it was still on day 2. Was still, you know, is he even gonna, you know, pull through this? I'm sorry guys, they were talking about surgery, and I thought, if he has to have surgery, like, I don't even know in his weakened state how he's going to handle that. So yeah, I really thought that he would probably be, if he survived, he was going to be left in a pretty bad state, and probably a poor quality of life. But I want to say this with all the sides of my heart. I wouldn't have cared. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh Lord, have mercy upon us. Okay, we'll just edit that part out. I want to say this from all the sides of my heart, that I wouldn't have cared. I wouldn't have cared how he was left. I wouldn't have cared if he was in a wheelchair. I wouldn't have cared if he was a mechanical lift. I wouldn't have cared if he was incontinent for the rest of his days. It wouldn't have mattered to me one iota. He still would have been coming home to me, and he still would have been coming home with me. It might have taken months, but there's no way that he's staying at the hospital. There's no way that he's living in a nursing home. He is coming home with me. And I will do as I promised on our wedding day, and I will take care of the love of my life for the rest of my life. So I wouldn't have cared. I wouldn't have cared. I mean, I hoped, obviously, for the best outcome for him. But for me, it wouldn't have mattered, really, you know, what state he came back in, as long as I got him back. That's all I cared about. I just, you know, selfishly, I guess, maybe, but I just wanted him back. And yeah, so... So later on that day, I was in the room with him, and one of his nurses came in, and she said that Dr. M is on the phone, and he wants to speak to you. And I thought, oh God, and my heart just went up in my throat. I thought, oh Lord, here we go. Because I'm thinking he's going to tell me that, you know, it's been the recommendation of his colleagues and, you know, whatever, that we get his butt to Toronto ASAP and, you know, get some surgery done. I'm having serious technical issues this evening, people, for some weird reason. I don't know. Stay. Anyway, and then he said to me that, I can't remember if he told me then or if he had told me previously that okay, I gotta say this. Fonz's nurse and we laughed at each other afterwards. And if you're watching this, girlfriend, you know I'm talking about. I love this girl. I love this girl, and I wish I could mention her name. But if you're watching this somehow, we just saw you. and you just saw your miracle stroke patient, because you know who you'll know I'm talking about you, right? He had told us where the blockage was, and I was really, really sure that he had said carotids here, right? And so was she. She thought that he had said carotid arteries as well. And then when he called back that afternoon, and she said, okay, he's on the phone, he wants to talk to you, and I went out there going, oh God, you know, it was then that he told me that it was the vertebrals, or vertebrals, whoever you're talking, depends on who you're talking to, how you pronounce it, but those are what, if this pen is your spine, your neck, those blood vessels run down. It's hard to do it this way. Meh. They run down either side of your spine. So there are 4 major blood vessels pretty much that feed your brain, right? So you've got your carotids, you've got jugulars, there's a bunch of them anyway, and your vertebrals are quite, you know, big feeders of the brain, right? So that was where his blockage was in the vertebral arteries, and the left side was 100% occluded, 100% blocked, and the right side was, he said, moderately. And I said, can we put a percentage on moderately? And he'd say, I'd say about 60%. So yeah, he had all this blockage back there. We had no idea. The man never even had a headache, like never. There was nothing wrong with my husband, nothing. So this light is very unflattering. Hang on. Oh God. Okay, this isn't working so good. Oh dear. All right. Okay. Yep. Oh wow. God, that wasn't a good plan. Okay. So yeah, so he told me that the blockage was in the vertebral arteries, told me what the percentage of occlusion was. And I thought, here we go. He's going to say, okay, you know, given the fact that he's had the 3 strokes, and he's got all this blockage, we are going to have to send him to Toronto, and he's going to have surgery. And I thought, oh, dear God. But anyways, that's not what he said. He said, I spoke to my colleague, the vascular surgeon in Peterborough, who then referred him to another surgeon in Toronto at St. Mike's. So he had a conversation with him as well. And this guy said, you know what, being the vertebrals, I'm sure as you're well aware, we don't like touching them because they are so, like your spinal cord is right there, like literally right there. And when it's the vertebrals, like they'll scrape your carotids. My dad's had it done in his 80s. You know, had some blockage removed from here. That can be done, and I mean it's still a very, you know, dangerous procedure. It's not a fun thing, and it's not exactly, you know, it's a pretty major thing. But as far as the vertebrals go, they just will not touch it unless it's literally, I think, life and death. If we don't do it, this patient is definitely going to pass away. So at that point in time, really, what do you have to lose? Try it. If they're going to die anyway, well then, you know, try it, right? But that wasn't the case. And he said, well, he said that the vertebral arteries, that there's no way, you know, had it been the carotids, that they would have certainly, you know, attempted it. But with where it was, they said, no, it's not going to happen. So he said, let's just treat this patient medically, meaning with medications and therapy, and, you know, try to, you know, have him have as good a quality of life as he can have, and try to prevent him from having another stroke. And they did say that if he does have another stroke, if he survives it, then we'll talk again, you know, maybe about potentially doing surgery, because then you're going to get to the point where this man's going to die if you do nothing. And he has about an 90% chance of dying if you do the surgery, but if you don't, he's got no chance. So that was just the biggest relief, because I was really, really, really worried about him having surgery, because I thought he's in such a terrible state that I really didn't think that he was going to do well if they did the surgery. But thank you, Jesus, they didn't have to, or didn't have to. They needed to be cleared out, but they wouldn't do it. And I was ever so grateful when they said, no, we're not touching that. So that was really good. And then yeah, so that was kind of it. I think for that day was kind of it. And he just sort of, he stayed in that state of, just he slept a lot. No, I don't even know if I want to say slept. It's more than a sleep. I mean, he wasn't on any medications, as I said, as far as pain meds or, anything that would have kind of kept him doped out of his tree. I think his brain was just so shocked. His body, he just shut down. He just went into like, and we need to go into rest mode, and just click. And that was it. And he would respond, like I said, to verbal stimuli and physical stimuli if you touched him, on the right, or touched the right side of his face or whatever. But for the most part, he just slept, and it was the constant battle of for 3 days of trying to keep his blood pressure under control. And again, they tried this med and that med, and these two meds together, that ain't working. Let's throw a third one in. Forget it. Let's, it was nuts. It was crazy. They tried flipping everything and combination of everything that they could until they finally hit on something that was actually keeping it like, I mean, he wasn't like, 130 on 80 perfect blood pressure, but certainly, he was below 200, and he was, at an acceptable level. So that was kind of where we sat for that day. And yeah. It was tough. It was really, really tough. But, so tomorrow's video gets a little bit happier. We start to, on day 3, we started to see a little bit of a corner turning happening. And day 4 was like, dun, da, da, triumph. And from there on, it just went better and better and better. So hang in there, guys. These videos are going to get happier. I promise you that. So, I think that's pretty much it for today. I'm looking at my notes thing. Did I miss anything? God only knows. If I forgot to write it down, I won't remember to say it. So, like, if it ain't documented, it didn't happen, remember? But anyway, okay, so I am going to go and let Fonts preview these videos. As I had said before, he's sitting right in the living room. I do have his express permission to do this and to say these things. And as I said, there was, certain things he doesn't want gotten into that are of, more personal or private nature. And I certainly will not discuss them. And again, that I had promised him that I will not hit publish until he's had a chance to look at the videos. If there's anything, pardon me, I have like an external video editing tool thing. See, tool thing. Isn't that techie, eh? Seriously. Oh my God. And why did I say external? Where the frig did that come from? It's on my camera. I have like an editing where you guys probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You edit out shit like that. Oh my God. Oh, guys, are you okay? I'm sorry. You know what? Hold on a second here. I'm going to show you what I'm using. Initially, I was holding my camera in my hands, right? And my daughter kept saying, and I'm still not doing it. My daughter kept saying, Mom, look at the lens. You're not looking at the lens. It looks like you're talking to somebody else over here in the room, right? Look at the lens, Mom. Look at the... Anyway, so I was holding the phone in my hands. And, of course, you get your little jiggle-joggle going on, right? And she was like, Mom, you're making me seasick. And she said, find some way of propping your phone up on something. And she said that her fiance had actually gotten a phone stand thingy majiggy from the Buck store. Yay, my favorite place in the world. That you can just like rest your phone in if you want to make videos and you don't want the joggly bit going on, right? So I haven't been to the Buck store yet. It's a half an hour away. So I hunted around and I hunted around. I thought, what the hell could I use? And then it come to me. Aha.